there's a phenomenon called the hallmarks of aging, which are these underlying things that go wrong as we age. And these are phenomena that seem to underlie all disease. So the idea is if you treat these things, or if you correct these problems, called the hallmarks of aging, that it will dramatically extend life. So if we cured all the cancer and heart disease from the planet, how many years extra do you think we'd live?
Probably an extra 10. I don't know.
3 to 5.
3 to 5. Okay.
Maybe push it 7.
Okay.
If you address the hallmarks, we go to 120 or 150.
So if we eliminate diseases,
the number 1 and 2 killers in the world, we got rid of them. It's only going to give us a few extra years of life.
Yeah. Wow. What are the other hallmarks then?
Well, so the other hallmarks are really driven around around these 10, I call it 10 things. One of them is the microbiome, and we'll get back to how to take care of your microbiome, but I'll just sort of list the hallmarks, and then we can come back to how to eat for your microbiome. Okay. But the first thing that happens is you get damage to your DNA. So every day there's little insults, toxins, the bad diet we're eating, whatever it is, stress, causing little death by 1,000 cuts. But thank God you have a repair system. You have a DNA repair system that goes out on a mission and starts to fix all the damages. Now, over time, you may have 99.9% fixing, but then there's that 1.1% that keeps getting worse over time. So that's one thing. Second is we get damage to our telomeres, which are these little things at the end of our chromosomes that keep them safe and intact, and they shorten as we get older, and if they're too short, the cells stop replicating and you die. Then there's epigenetic changes, and epigenetics are really important because it helps us distinguish between our chronological age and our biological age. So our chronological age is how long we're alive. I was born in 1959. I can't do anything about that. I just can't. I'm 63 on the calendar, and I can't do anything about that. But my biological age is how old I am on the inside.
So how do we reverse the biological age while we continue to age chronologically?
That's the plan. So I did my biological age, and at 62, and I was 43.
Wow.
So biologically, I'm 43. I'm going for 25, but I'm chronologically 62.
That's crazy.
We can get biologically younger as we get chronologically older. And studies have found even in 8 weeks in high-intensity dietary interventions, some lifestyle stuff, you can reverse biological age in 8 weeks by 3 years.
That's incredible. What's the biggest gap that has been recorded, do you know, in terms of chronological and biological?
Well, this is really new because we really only started measuring the epigenetic ages through a biological clock over the last couple of years.
Oh my gosh.
Because this is really new science. So now we have a metric to determine interventions and how they work on affecting your biological age. Because before we say, eat better, exercise, take this vitamin, okay, whatever, take this drug, how do we measure how it's really affecting you in your biological clock? Well, now we have metrics.
How do we measure that?
So it's measured by taking a blood sample and looking at the epigenome, which basically means above your genes. Your genes are fixed. You got 20,000 genes. They're like the keyboard on a piano. There's 88 keys. You can't do anything about that. But the epigenome is like the piano player. The piano player can play jazz, rock, classical, Mozart, reggae, whatever that you want, blues, ragtime, all on the same piano. So that's the epigenome, is the piano player. And what determines which songs get played in your book of life, in your song book of life, is everything washing over your genes throughout your life. Your thoughts, your relationships, what you eat, your exercise, sleep, how you handle stress, environmental toxins, your microbiome. Literally everything is washing over the genes constantly and regulating the epigenome. So by living a healthy lifestyle, by doing some of the things we're going to talk about around how do we sort of hack longevity, we can actually improve the expression of our epigenome and reverse our biological clock. So that's one of the hallmarks of aging. The epigenetic degradation happens as we get older, but we can fix that. And then there's damage to proteins. So you have proteins that are the communication systems in your body, and it's like having kind of a scratched CD, or I don't know if anybody knows what a CD is anymore.
A record, it's
a record. And these proteins get misfolded or misshapen, they don't work right, and so you have this damaged protein. So we have to fix that. And then there's problems with stem cells. Stem cells get tired, they don't produce as well, you can't rejuvenate your body as well, so they get what we call stem cell exhaustion. And then there's these horrible things that happen called zombie cells. Zombie cells are called senescent cells. Senescence means aging. So basically these cells are supposed to die, but they don't die. And they just continue to spew out nasty chemicals, inflammatory chemicals, and produce inflammation. And that's another one of the hallmarks of aging, is inflammaging. is
Inflammaging.
inflammaging, right? Everything that happens as you get older connects to inflammation. So inflammation is kind of the disease of aging. And it's why so many people were susceptible to COVID, because we're all pre-inflamed. And then the COVID hit, it's like gasoline on a fire. So we have inflammaging as a hallmark of aging. And then we have mitochondrial changes. Mitochondria are the energy factories in your cells, or in your muscle. They're in every organ, every cell. And our mitochondria poop out. And that's why you see like a 2-year-old running around like a jackrabbit, and someone who's 90 kind of moving kind of slow, because their mitochondria are not working right. But those are things we can regenerate, repair, renew,
that's good.
recreate. We can build through like the protein and the exercise and various supplements and foods, all help rejuvenate mitochondria. Right. And then there's another group, which is of hallmarks. It's really one class, but it's called deregulated nutrient sensing. And that's a big mumbo jumbo of words, but it basically means how your body senses food. And that screws up as we get older. And there's basically, this is really the crux of a lot of the interventions around longevity, is how do we properly activate these nutrient sensing pathways to enhance our health and extend our life versus the opposite.
Right.
So your body's constantly picking up signals from the food you're eating, right? Proteins, fats, sugars, all that. And these 4 pathways are influenced by what you're eating. We talked about one of them, mTOR. So that detects too much of protein or sugar. And then that can be important. And if that's overstimulated, your body's going to age faster. If it's inhibited periodically, right? So, like, fasting is good, but if you fast all the time, you're going to die of starvation. Right? Cold plunges are great, and I know you did Wim Hof's thing.
But if you're in there for 2 hours, you might.
Yeah, if you're in there for like 3 days, you're going to die. Right? So like there's a Goldilocks dose, right? So that's really important to remember. So there's mTOR. There's also something called insulin signaling pathways. So insulin signaling is really important to regulate your blood sugar. But if you're constantly eating starch and sugar, it's like a avalanche of starch and sugar that overactivates this pathway and drives cancer, heart disease, dementia, disease, inflammation, mitochondrial damage, DNA damage, all the things that we don't want to happen. All the epigenetic changes that we see, all the hallmarks of aging, are all driven by these pathways. Right. And then there's 2 other pathways. They detect insulin signaling, and mTOR detect too much of stuff, right? Too much sugar and protein. And then the other 2 pathways, sirtuin pathways and AMPK, are important for sensing lack or scarcity. That turns them on. So sirtuins are really amazing because they get activated and they send out like an army of a repair team throughout your body to repair all your DNA, to make new mitochondria, to shut off inflammation, to improve insulin sensitivity, to do all kinds of great things, to increase your antioxidant systems. And that's activated by resveratrol. We might have heard about, the work of David Sinclair and how red wine and resveratrol might extend life. Well, it did. In these mice, it's extended it by 1/3. But it was the equivalent of 1,500 bottles of red wine.
Right.
So you don't want to be doing that. So they were
the
giving
alcohol is not as good.
Alcohol. 1,500 bottles of red wine, you'd be dead. So basically, you can activate these pathways. But NAD, people have heard of NAD and NAD shots and eye drips, and that works on their sirtuin pathways. So this is how this works. You might have heard about metformin as a drug for longevity. That works on AMPK to help improve insulin sensitivity. So there's other ways to activate that through plant compounds and through exercise and all sorts of things. So we don't really need the drugs. I'm not a big fan of metformin. We can talk more about that if you want. But I don't know if I got to all 10, but I think those are the 10 hallmarks of aging. And the last one is the microbiome. And the microbiome is really important, and it's not on the classic list of hallmarks of aging. I added it. But when you look at the literature, it's really clear that as we age, our microbiome degrades. We get what we call dysbiosis, imbalances in our gut bacteria, and those gut bacteria become toxic and inflammatory. So part of the diet you have to have is to take care of your inner garden. You need pre and probiotic foods and polyphenols. So prebiotic foods are things like, asparagus, artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes, jicama, plantains. These are foods that feed the good bacteria, right? And then there's probiotic foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, tempeh, these ancient foods that have been around forever that are fermented foods that are prebiotic foods. I grew up on pickles. I'm Jewish. I didn't even know that was a probiotic food. And then there's polyphenols, and this is an incredible discovery that there are certain compounds in plants that your gut bacteria love. So you're not only eating for yourself, you're eating for the trillions of microbes that almost outnumber your cells in your gut.
Right.
And those microbes, when they're bad, cause inflammation and disease and diabetes and cancer and everything else. But when they're good, they regulate inflammation, they help you stay healthy. It's super important to feed them right. So you have to learn how to tend your inner garden. And there's a couple of ones that are really important, like green tea, pomegranate, cranberry. And pomegranate's an interesting one. I talk about this in the book. Most people have pretty crappy microbiomes, pun intended. And the truth is that you've lost a lot of important species that you need to work with your diet to make good stuff. So if you eat pomegranate, it has a compound in it that gets converted by good gut bacteria to something called urolithin A. Now, urolithin A you might not have heard about, but you will. It's really amazing, and there's millions of dollars of research on this compound that is derived from pomegranate being metabolized by your gut bacteria and producing this compound. But you could also make it and give it externally. And in studies, they found that without exercise, it increases fitness level through VO2 max, increases muscle strength, and increases mitochondrial cleanup or a mitochondrial autophagy.
Without exercise.
Without exercise, and also increases mitochondrial renewal and biogenesis to make new mitochondria. So basically, think about it, you're taking this like pomegranate, your gut's metabolizing it, you create this magical longevity compound, and that's just one example, right? So we need to feed our gut bacteria with lots of these colorful vegetables.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's possible to be very vibrant if we know how to take care of ourselves. And what we've done in our culture is activate all of our disease systems and degradation and dysfunction. But we now know that we have an innate healing system, and we can activate our